In this episode of the Exploring Information Security podcast, how to start a successful CitySec meetup, part 1. Welcome to the Exploring Information Security podcast, where you'll learn, explore, and grow your security mindset. I am your host, Timothy D. Block, and in this episode, we'll be exploring how to start a successful CitySec meetup. And with me today to do that is returning guest, Johnny Xmas. Johnny,
Hey. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. So we were actually just talking about this. We're going to run through the conversation again, but how many CitySec meetups are you involved in?
Directly involved in, it currently is 4 all around the Chicagoland area. And that's, as a coordinator, someone who just, is involved in making sure things go right, directing sponsors, getting sponsors, things like that. So, it's about four a month, about 1 a week I deal with.
Wow.
And it's fun and cool.
Yeah, I do one. So I started one in Columbia. So, and that's not a terrible, getting started is probably the most amount of work. But once you get it going, it's kind of maintaining, looking for guest speakers. So I can't imagine you're doing that pretty much weekly.
Oh, no. Really, once you have it up and ready to go, if you've really got a good framework rolling and regular attendance, it should be able to take care of itself mostly. You always need to have a second and third in command, so to speak, as things come up. But yeah, once you really get it established and rolling, they're good at taking care of themselves.
Yep. All right. So what is the CitySec?
That's open to your own interpretation.
Right.
It's CitySec. It's for the purposes of this podcast is a local information security meetup, which is generally a meeting of information security minded people. It's not necessarily people who work in the industry. But again, that's up to how you want to craft it. If you want to say, we really want to limit this to people who are currently actively working in the industry, that's up to you, and that's totally a prerogative. I prefer to not do that because one of the best parts of these CitySec meetups is the ability to come in, meet some people, network, and possibly get yourself in a job in the industry. And so you don't want to alienate those people. But overall, it's a place to come, meet up, talk Infosec, with some like-minded people, or talk about anything really with some people, that are going to be like-minded because you're all there for at least that reason. Have some beers, whatever. It's primarily definitely a networking event. The common denominator is people who show up and like to complain about computers, I guess.
No, that's a really good description. Yeah. I do want to key in on your point about the people that aren't in information security that show up, because that's something that we've noticed is we've got 2-3 people for there's actually fewer people in information security than there are actually people showing up, and a lot of people, there's just a lot of interest out there is what I'm finding.
Isn't that the best? Those people who show up, who go out of their way to come to this because they care that much, they're that interested in it, that they showed up to this Infosec meetup to go, hey, I'm not working in the industry, but this is really cool and I'm really into this, and it's cool that you guys are here, so I just want to come hang out. I love those guys the most. Yeah,
those guys are the best. So what is the format for CitySecs? What I imagine there's several different ones. I don't know if you stick to the same format or if each one's a little bit different.
Each one is definitely a little bit different. You do have to tweak it based on the interest of the people in the area. What companies are in that area, what corporate structure these people are coming from is going to affect their attitudes towards certain things, and they're going to be more interested in some stuff and not in others. I personally am a fan of the BurbSec framework, which differs from a lot of other CitySecs in that we don't do speakers, we don't do presentations. That's just not part of the nightly repertoire. We don't like the interruption that causes. We don't like the telling everyone to be quiet because somebody is talking thing. There are other CitySec meetups here that definitely do that, and they have a huge following, and people love it. And so it's really up to just whatever kind of environment you're trying to coordinate. I'm not saying that there's anything against having, a nightly speaker or multiple nightly speakers. That's really cool that you have people who want to give presentations on what they're up to. And that's definitely informational. It's just a matter of what kind of environment you want to cultivate for that particular evening. And I'm a very big fan of it's a place to unwind, to hang out, to relax, to talk about whatever you want, to be able to show up whenever you can show up. Like if you can't get there till 8, I don't want you to get there at 8 and then someone's speaking and then you just have to sit there in your chair and not be able to talk to anyone. And then you have to leave at 9:30 and haven't gotten to talk to anyone because there was presentations going the whole time. I like it more of a show up, hang out, networking, mingle, grab a beer, grab a soda, talk to a few people, and head out. And so no matter when you showed up and when you left, you at least did have an opportunity to be productive. So I would say that is like the core of the BurbSec framework is the no presentations. We also do no dues, like no fees to be a member. It's all and based on that, we don't meet anywhere that requires an expenditure of money. BurbSec doesn't cost anything to hold, so collecting dues wouldn't make any sense. We're not renting a facility to host these in. We have them all in bars, and we don't rent rooms inside of the bars. We don't do private rooms. We just meet up in public spaces. And some of the places are kind enough to give us our own like little back corner that we can hang out in and generally be left alone, or, and also suck up all the space and be really loud, annoying computer geeks like we are. And so that all works out. And so, yeah, I would say those are the two primary things that set BurbSec apart from other CitySecs is the no speaking and no dues.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's kind of how we approached it too. So I feel like we've taken like a hybrid approach to where we started in like a bar, and then some people were like, well, we want to do presentations. So we started doing presentations. And then there's some people that just want to meet in a bar. So we have to we have to like balance that out, which is fine with me because so we have presenters. We, I think our December meetup is always at like a restaurant or something. So, it's more relaxed and laid back, kind of like you're talking about, where you can just go. And we actually took over. So some places have like trivia, and we took over like a section of trivia on Infosec. Related items.
Right. And that's what I mean. Like, you got to tweak it to what's up with your city and what's up with the people who show up. Like, there's no right or wrong framework at all. There's like anyone who's going to say, no, man, you shouldn't have presentations at your meetup. No, it's BS. Because if that's what your people want, do it, man. If that's what's going to get everyone into it and be like, man, this meetup's cool. They always got these cool presenters. Do it. Have 20 presenters. If that's what's up with the people who are coming, do it. If you want to do no presenters, but like once a quarter, one of your meetups meets somewhere else because you're going to do a bunch of presenters quarterly, like whatever works out for you, do it. But definitely be open to what the people want. Definitely be open to the fact that what you want is not necessarily what the people want, and you got to be willing to tweak it. You can't be like, oh no, this is my meetup, and this is how I'm going to run it. If you don't like it, you go start your own. It's nobody's meetup. The whole concept of a meetup is it's a bunch of like-minded people hanging out together. I'm a big fan of anarchy. I'm a big anarchist. Nobody's in charge. Like I'll call myself a coordinator. I'm not. I don't like to say I run anything because really, like, I just help coordinate things, and there's nobody in the structure that has more or less authority than I do. If I need help coordinating anything, I can ping somebody else and go, hey, can you help out with the sponsor that's going to show up tomorrow night? I'm not going to be there. And it's the only reason you even need coordinators is to work with the people who own the location that you're going to be using, and to work with sponsors. And it's just because they need a definite contact to speak with. Beyond that, like, don't go all power hungry. Like, you're just running a meetup in a bar, man.
Right. No, absolutely. Right. That's kind of the approach I've taken, is that, like, if I'm hit by a bus, like that CitySec meetup will keep going on.
Yeah. That's the sign of a great meetup.
Right. Right. And
like,
that's,
just next week, like coincidentally, both me and my partner at BurbSec East are being called away to LA. And so we actually don't even have like a third person in like down the chain to use in that case. And so we're like, but we have a sponsor. So I'm like, I have to tell the sponsor to talk to somebody. So I just picked another guy who's always at every one of them. And I'm like, hey man, can you take care of the sponsor next week? And he's like, okay. And he gets all freaked out because he's like, oh God, I'm in charge. And I'm like, no, you just tell the sponsor how the sponsor stuff works, because you go all the time, so you know, and that's it. And he's like, oh, okay. I'm like, yeah, that's all there is. There's nothing else involved. It's the bar knows we're there because we're there every month. They know how to take care of us. There's no other coordination involved. And if I got hit by a bus, it would keep on going.
Yep, exactly. So what's your attendance? Like what numbers are you talking about when you guys host your CitySec stuff?
That is a wide difference, and that's what makes it really cool too. And it doesn't detract from any of the specific ones. We have the first BurbSec Prime, hovers around 30-ish people every month. And it's a lot of people from a major suburb where there's a lot of industry. And then from there, there was a lot of people said, hey, that suburb's really hard for us to get out to. There's other people in other big suburbs. So we're going to start one about 10 miles south, and that was called BurbSec West. And don't ask why it was called West. Because I'd have to explain like Chicago civics to you. BurbSec West, and they're in another suburb that has a lot of industry, and they get anywhere from sometimes it's as low as 6 people, sometimes it's as huge as 30, and it often goes back and forth between those two extremes. But even when it's only 8 people that showed up, it's still really fun. It's really cool. We'll still hang out till like 10 at night sometimes with just those 8 people hanging out, just trading complaints about work and still asking the questions, going, hey, have you seen this new thing that came out? Or are you guys using McAfee for this or that? How do you get around this garbage? How do you set that up? Like, because even when it's just those 8 people, it's 8 people who really care about what's going on. And so it's still a cool place to hang out. Mm-hmm. And then we've got BurbSec North, which I would say is consistently right around 8. Like, they'll max out at like 15 on a really good week, but it's because they're way up north in more of an, I don't want to say obscure suburb, but a distant, out of the way suburb where it's hard to get to and hard to get out of, which made it a great location for a CitySec meetup, because these people up there, they really want to get in on it, but it's really hard for them to get to any of the other ones. So a guy up there, Dave Schwartzberg, who I'm sure you know, started BurbSec North for all the people who were kind of sequestered up in that area. And there's very few of them, but they're passionate, and they consistently meet up every month, and it's really cool. And I'll only make it up there maybe once every 4 to 6 months, but every time I go, it's a good, solid group of people. You always know who's going to be there. It's always a good time. And they actually like to do presentations up there. If somebody, and it's not every month, it's just whenever somebody's got something cool that they have a presentation they want to show to everybody, they're like, sure, man, throw it on the TV, do it. Because there's only 8 of them, so it's real easy to get a group vote on that. And they go, yeah, whatever, let's do it. It's something to do. It's fun. And so it doesn't adhere like strictly to the BurbSec framework, but who cares? Because BurbSec is not some corporation that has franchises. It's just an idea that we had. And if you want to veer away from it, go for it. It's your meetup. And then we've got BurbSec East, which is not in the burbs at all. It's very, very deep into the city. It's just why we call it East. And that one started with about 20 on its first day. It dwindled down to like 10 some days. And then we just tried a merger last night with another CitySec meetup group called CitySec, which had very different ideas about what a meetup should be than we did. They're very anti-sponsor. They don't want sponsors. They don't want to say that they agree with any company, and they don't want some companies, agreeing with them, which is cool. I totally get that. That's cool. One of the things BurbSec also says about sponsors is we don't allow presentations from the sponsors. We don't allow pushy salespeople. Like you can't go around, leaning into people like, hey, when can I schedule a call with you? When can I, how come you guys don't ever get back to my emails? I've been trying to get in your company for 6 months. Like that's absolutely not allowed, because we want BurbSec to be a place where you just come, relax, get away from work, just hang out. Like my favorite thing, I'm sure you've noticed by now on this podcast, is that you just show up to complain about work. That's what we do. And so I don't need these salespeople who are calling me at my desk all day now showing up at my meetup where I've come to get away from work, trying to lean on me. So that is not allowed. But if you want to sponsor, if you want to come in and, I'll tweet your company name out and say, hey, these dudes are buying us drinks tonight. Come say hi to them. And then I can tell people, hey, make sure you just go over there and thank that guy for buying you a beer tonight. I'll totally do that. As long as you're super respectful of the fact that we don't want your sales pitches, you're still more than welcome to come here. If you think just merely having your name on a docket is going to help you, by all means, come buy us a beer. I'll never say no to anyone who wants to buy me a beer. CitySec was very much against any of that. They were like, no sponsors. We're not siding with any vendors. We're not doing that. And they really like doing presentations too. So very different from BurbSec. But anyway, CitySec was having, I don't want to say issues. They weren't a regular meetup. It was whenever a few of the coordinators felt like doing it, they would announce it a few days prior. And so there was a lot of confusion. There was a lot of questioning of, hey, does CitySec even exist anymore? But they would meet about quarterly, and they were huge. They would get 70 people sometimes. It was an awesome, huge, great meetup, very well loved and respected. And that's why there was always talk about like, hey, CitySec still around? Man, I haven't seen CitySec anymore. I hope they didn't close down. It's because they had a really good framework too, and a lot of people liked it. And one day at BurbSec Prime, the guy who runs CitySec said, hey, you're running BurbSec East, right? And long story short, he said, why don't we put everything together on the same night in the same place just to make it easier? And I said, okay, yeah, come on in. Hang out. And he did, and we kicked our numbers up to we broke 60 that night, and that was just last month. Everybody had a blast. The venue took care of us. Nobody complained, and everybody I talked to was like, wow, this is amazing. I'm definitely coming back. The guy who runs CitySec thought it went great. He said, let's do this again. So BurbSec East, the fourth in the BurbSec lineage, is now the largest one.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Yeah, and I asked about attendance because that was something that I think some people will. I think that's probably one of the most frustrations things for people, anyone starting it.
Yeah.
Is
let's talk about that.
Yeah, you'll have like 4 people show up, so we had ours. Like I said, we had ours at a restaurant to begin with, and we had like 16 people, and then the next one it's like 5. You know, and so that can be frustrating, but we've slowly built, and after like a year and a half, we've been sitting steady at like 15 to 20 people. But just starting out, and I had to keep reminding people, don't worry about the numbers; they'll come as long as we keep producing content.
Yeah, and even if it's just like 5 people anyway.
Right, exactly. Yeah, we're doing what we want to do. We're hanging out. We're like you said, complaining about work. So
you're not starting a company. You're not like, you don't have a profitability you have to worry about and venture capital. Like, you're just hanging out. Settle down.
Right.
But stick to it. It's going to be about probably a year before you really start getting some solid numbers in the solid group. And 15, that's a good number.
Mm-hmm.
That's a legit meetup. Like, a lot of people are going to be like, man, we only got like 15 people. No. BurbSec North, like if they hit 15, that's huge. That's a huge party. And they're totally cool with like the 8 that they normally have. That's a great meetup to go hang out with. All 8 of those guys are cool. And Jacob Kitchell, the guy who started BurbSec West, has this really good story he tells about when he first started BurbSec West. The first day it was just him. And it was this random dude who showed up like wearing sweatpants, who didn't have like a lot of, like he had a lot of inapplicable things to talk about, and he was weird, and he stuck around for like 2 hours, and then he went home, and then it was just Jacob, and then nobody else showed up, and that was it. But then like Jacob did it again. He's like, all right, we just got to keep this rolling next month. And then like consistency is a hugely important thing. It has to be at a time when everyone can even guess when the next one's going to be.
Mhm.
Like our BurbSecs are always on specific Thursdays. Your meetup can say it's always the 15th of the month, regardless of what day that is, or it's always first Monday or whatever. I find Thursdays work really well for people. It's deep enough into the week. They've got their stuff taken care of. They're not working late usually. Friday's coming up when they know they're not going to be expected to crank much out anyway. They're sick of work for the week by Thursday. It's a great time to just unwind for a minute. Thursdays work well for us. Again, tweak it to whatever works for you. But then like the second month BurbSec West came out, they had like 10 people. And that's when I went. And I was like, oh, this is a really good meetup. I thought it was always like this. It was 10 people from a bunch of different companies, had a lot to talk about. I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is really working out well. And then Jacob was like, no, man, last month it was just me and this weirdo in sweatpants. So like just you gotta stick with it. And I found I finally bit the bullet a couple of months ago and put BurbSec East on meetup.com because I was going to a lot of corporate meetups. Like, I'm in Chicago, so we have a trillion corporations here. And Groupon was hosting an information security night where their architects were talking about things that Groupon is doing information security wise. And he was talking about like specific engineering stuff and showing us code and showing us output from their SOC. It was super cool and super useful, like definitely actionable information. And so I met a lot of people there that I had not seen at any of the BurbSecs. And I was saying, hey, how do you hear about this? And then I would ask them about BurbSec and they say, no, I never heard about BurbSec. Or they would say, yeah, I heard of it, but I don't know where it is, or things like that. And I'd say, well, how'd you hear about this then? And they said, oh, it was on meetup.com. It was on meetup.com. I saw it on Eventbrite. I saw it on Meetup. I was like, man, all right. Let me throw BurbSec East on Meetup and see what happens. And to list an event on Meetup, it's like it costs money. I think it's $10 a month or $5 a month or something like that. And so I was like very much against spending money on BurbSec because we don't take in any money and it's not like a real company. So spending money feels weird on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt weird, like advertising for my BurbSec, whereas the other ones don't do it. But I was like, you know what? There's a ton of people in the city, and they're not getting the word that there's this really cool meetup. And I'm just doing this for people to come to the meetup and hang out with each other and network. Like I'm not doing this to get famous. Like I don't call myself Johnny BurbSec, And I threw it on Meetup. And instantly, huge response. And a lot of the people who I saw checking on Meetup, I definitely talked to at the event. So it definitely brought people in. I would personally recommend advertising in that fashion because otherwise, what are you going to do? Like it's strictly all you have is word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to get that word to where people are going to hear it. And you can tweet out, till your fingers are raw. But if nobody's following that Twitter account, then it's falling on deaf ears. You're not renting commercial space on TV. You don't have that money. So I do personally like Eventbrite or meetup.com because people are actively searching for meetups on that site. So they're already out there looking. You just have to tell them where you're at.
Yeah, that's been the biggest thing for us, and we knew it was more like a word of mouth type of thing for us. We have business cards, and anytime I find a pin board, I just throw it up there. I don't think
that's a good idea too. Yeah. Just make some flyers or business cards and stick them up there. That's a cool idea.
And then we have Itology, which is where we host ours, which is it's a nonprofit that's like it's supposed to be like an incubator for like tech stuff, and so they encourage like groups and stuff. So if you can find one of those companies around there, they've given us the facility to we get a projector, and if we need computers, we can get computers. But it's pretty much just an open space. We don't pay for it. And they also have a website that they host events, so we can post our events. And I've actually started seeing more people like coming in saying, "Yeah, I saw it up on the website."
Cool, yeah.
So things like, and they let us bring beer. So
it's critical. It's crucial.
yeah, that's one of the biggest things. So
I'm always very like I'm the first guy that will not drink with you. Like if you don't drink, I'll hang out with you, not drink. That's cool. But most people want to have a beer when they're unwinding. And so you got to have a space, it seems, where like beer is okay to have in there. And I found most people don't get drunk, because if you're getting drunk at a meetup, you're doing meetups wrong. You are shooting yourself in both feet. Our 2600 group, Chicago 2600, actually meets in I believe it's a nonprofit space, but it is a space dedicated to IT stuff like that, and it's actually called Space. And before that, one of the places they met at was a place sponsored by the YMCA. It was just a YMCA building that gave them a room that they can use for free. And another place they met up was a highway oasis, in like behind the bank kiosk, which is like, if you ever were going to host like a hacker meetup, especially like a 2600 one, which tends to be like more on the sketchy side of meetups. Like, can you think of a better like Mr. Robot style place than a highway oasis behind the bank kiosk at like 10 p.m.? Like that sounds like where dead drops definitely happen. Right. And it worked out great, and they were there for a very long time because the Oasis has Wi-Fi. It's got tons of tables and chairs, and it's generally empty at 10 p.m. on a Friday. So it worked out, but for whatever reason, they moved out of there to a place back in the Loop in the downtown Chicago. Maybe for ease of access for Chicago people, I don't know. But they've been around forever. So wherever you can find is, it's got to be centrally located to your demographic. So sometimes that's not necessarily going to be where you live. You might have to drive a few miles to get to your own meetup. You want to, location is key for getting the most people. If you're out in the boonies, you might, like BurbSec North is, you might only get 8 people regularly, but they might be really cool people too. Otherwise, you're going to have to host it somewhere closer to civilization if you are just hell-bent on like having double or triple digit attendance numbers.
All right, so I feel like we've talked about a lot of the topics that I wanted to cover. What other preparation, I guess, going back to when getting started, what were some of the challenges and some of the things? We've talked about spaces, we've talked about marketing, we've talked about sponsors. What else needs to be done to get something going?
The space is really a big deal, and especially if you're hosting it in a bar, a public venue that caters to other people at the same time, which work out well. I really like that because you've got a wait staff. You're not bringing your own beer and dealing with all the mess and the cleanup. You don't have a room that you're responsible for cleaning up when you leave, and the next thing you know, everyone's gone and it's just you, and now you got to start sweeping.
Well, I will say that our group is actually really good about that. We usually have like 4 to 5 people staying behind that help clean up. And that is important too, especially since we're using it for free. We don't want to trash the place and then they're like, you can't come back. So
and there's always someone who, you'll get someone one time who's going to trash the place, make everyone look bad. And, but BurbSec tends to use local pubs. And so the key ingredients for a really good meeting space in that regards are food and drink. For sure. You're usually like we host them during the week, and so it's usually right after work or an hour after work, and so people want dinner, they're hungry, so you want to make sure food and drink is there. So not just a bar, but a bar with a kitchen. You want to make sure that the wait staff and the bar as a whole is cool with divvying out individual checks for a group of X people. A lot of them are going to go, no more than 2 checks, per group. They don't want to be splitting, a check 30 ways. And that's not going to work for you because a lot of people are going to come and go at their own pace. And if you got people ducking out before the whole group ducks out, you almost always end up with the people who are left at the end paying a majority of the tab, getting screwed on the money. So you definitely want a place where everyone can get their own check and that's not a problem. And you want a place with wait staff that can handle a group of 10 to 30 people without freaking out on a Thursday night. And I would say the most important thing is that the volume level of the place is such that normal conversations can be had between, small groups of people without having this blaring music going on. There's this thing that started in like '05 or so that's gradually gotten more popular, where as the evening goes on, the music will get louder and louder and louder in the bar until like 10 p.m. when it's deafening, and there's no way you're able to talk to anybody else in this place. And that was based off the study that came out around then that said when people can't talk to each other, they'll consume more as just out of nervous habit. And so if people can't talk to each other because the music's too loud, all they have left to do is drink, and then they'll spend more money drinking. And it was like, this was a psychological study, and it's totally true. And so that's what all these bars are doing, especially in like major cities. If you go into even a bar on like a Wednesday at like 10 p.m., the music is cranked in there. And you're like, what is this? Is this a club? I'm trying to have a beer. And that's why they want you to have 7 beers. They want you to quit talking to your friend and start drinking. This isn't a library. Well, that's a bad. This isn't a Starbucks. Get out. You go talk at home. And so like you want to find a bar that's not going to do that. That, when 9, 10 p.m. rolls around, the music's still quiet or there's no music, so that you can still have these conversations, because the entire point of this is conversation. It's networking. It's catching up. You want to be able to talk to the guy next to you without having to scream. I've gone to some meetups and like woke up the next day and my voice was hoarse because I was yelling at the guy about freaking McAfee email gateway, like some mundane garbage. And now I can't talk at work on Friday because I was yelling at him in a dance club that I didn't know was going to pop up. So yeah, that's critical. Separate checks, quiet environments, good wait staff, food and beer. I would say those are your 4 necessary things for finding a great space for your meetup.
Yep. We don't have that problem, so we control that environment. So, and I like that, because I think that is very important.
And again, everyone has their own environment. Like wherever your meetup is, you got to make sure it's conducive to conversation and relaxation.
Yeah, it's going to fit your format is essentially, yeah. So, and that fits your format great. So I think yours is more of a challenge finding something like that, because we have, like I said, we have our December meetup, which isn't a restaurant. It's always like, well, where do we want to go? Is this venue going to be this way, and you just never know.
Oh yeah. CitySec had that problem because they didn't even have a set venue. They tried to, but every now and then, like, it would be booked for a private event, and then they'd have to, like, that day figure out where else to go. And they were in the heart of the most densely populated part of Chicago. And so you can't just tell 70 people, go to this bar, because there's already 150 people in that bar. You can't add 70 more and have any kind of a good time. So yeah, that was a really rough thing they ran into sometimes.
How important is a website for a meetup? Like, I guess, do you have?
Sure. I should check the visitor stats. We have a BurbSec.com, and that lists all of the BurbSecs on it. And I don't even know what the visitation to that site looks like, and I can go check. It's all static information. We don't really change venues at all, so there's no need for constant updates to the website. It's more of it's a catch for the people who are like, hey, I heard about this BurbSec thing. Let me check BurbSec.com to see what's up. Like, it's just to catch those people who caught it, in conversation and decided to go Google BurbSec or look at BurbSec.com to see. So we want to just make sure that there's something there. I don't think that that's a thing many people do anymore. That's a very Y2K thing. Let me go look at company.com to see what's up with them. Now it's more like I just found out, at least out in Chicago, it's more, let me go look at meetup.com and see what Infosec groups are out there. So it's definitely necessary to have a web presence. What that web presence is may vary. Currently, again, I'm a big fan of meetup.com because people are already there looking for it. And our Twitter accounts also have a lot of followers. Twitter seems to be big in the Infosec industry. and definitely big in Chicago. I know a lot of InfoSec people in Chicago who don't even actively post on Twitter. They literally use it as a news feed. And so they find a lot of BurbSec stuff on there. I'll ask a lot of people, hey, how'd you hear about this? And I'm always asking people, anytime I meet someone new at a BurbSec, I go, hey, how'd you find out about this? Because I want to know what's working. Mm-hmm. And it's before I threw it on Meetup, it was almost always Twitter. Like, oh, I saw it on Twitter, caught it on Twitter. So Twitter works really well. And so those are my two main web presences that seem to do the best, are meetup.com and Twitter. But we do have the website out there, and it's just static information. You can do just a one-page site. Hey, we're CitySec. We meet here every X. At this time, we have an average of so many people who work in these industries, and we usually wrap up around whenever, but it can go as late as this or that. Just all of that, the basic stats about your setup, and then an email address they can email if they got questions.
Yeah, no, that's good. I can confirm that you're not going to get a whole lot of people, because we do the same thing. So we ask, so how'd you hear about us? And it's usually like the ITology website. Oh, we heard it from this person. I don't know if we've had too many Twitter, and we have never used Meetup, but I'm gonna actually definitely have to go check that out.
That response was crazy.
Yeah,
and you know what? And it may very well vary by city. That might just be a big Chicago fad. I don't know. Try it out, see what happens.
Right. Well, and I'm looking at my traffic right now for a website, and we've got, we get 240 page views in February, but that's just the month. So
right. 240 versus the 15 people who show up. Like, that seems like there's a lot of interest being generated for you there.
Like I said, we have it on our business card. So it's like you said, it's got a lot of static information. I update it with pictures from time to time. And I also do our meetup agenda. And then, so I can just essentially, instead of writing out like a long email, because we have a listserv too. I don't know if you guys have a listserv.
No,
but we started up a listserv, which is more like, it's an opportunity for people to share information, or share links and talk about it ahead of time, or just during the month, because we only meet monthly. But then I also throw our meetup and then like a wrap up. So if people that missed it, they can go there and see what we did, what we covered, and get a link to. We actually, so one of the things we've done is we've started doing like Google Hangouts on Air. Because one, we can stream that live, and then two, it gets recorded. So then I have a recording of that presentation for people that miss it. And we've actually had people.
That is great for your framework. That's such a cool idea. And that works because you do presentations at yours. Right. So of course you'd want to be able to get those out to the people who couldn't make it, who maybe are kicking themselves because they had to work late or something. But now they can stream it while they're at work.
Right.
Yeah, that is a great idea. Our meetups either are too noisy or would be too lacking in content to be worth streaming. On occasion, there's I think like twice a year there's a month where two of the BurbSecs will overlap, and so as a joke we'll do like an inter-BurbSec like Skype session, but nothing beyond that.
Yeah, that's a cool idea too. That's the thing that I love about these CitySecs, is that there's just so much creativity. You could take them so different ways. There's like no set format. Everyone's a little bit different, and like you said, whatever works for the people that want to do, however they want to have the format is what will draw people out.
Yeah, and I gotta stress, like, do what works the best for your people and what your group seems to be into. There's no right or wrong format aside from things like the obvious, like elitism and alienating people. I'm not even a big fan of the, hey, this group is only for people who are actively working in the information security field. Like, I understand the point of it. Like, and really the only time I'd see you want to be able to filter that is when you just have too many people showing up and you got to be like, all right, we have to do something. Like, we have people who show up who aren't even in IT, who don't even want to work in IT, but think what's going on here is kind of cool. They like hearing the cool stories about some of the cool stuff we did, but they're, illustrators or something, acrobats. and it's like, yeah, cool. You like what we're into and hanging out with us? Come on in. Like, I'm totally open to. We've had people show up who had no path, no career path, were freshmen in like community college who were just taking, English and math classes and didn't know what they were going to do. And now here it is a few years later, and they're definitely Infosec majors just from coming to the meetups. Like, how awesome is that?
Yeah, that's awesome. Yep.
So, yeah, don't just drop the elitism. That's, again, why I'm a big fan of anarchy. Like, none of us are any more important than any others of us. Knock it off. Hang out with everybody, because you know what? You're going to meet a lot of cool people when you're on the same level as them.
Yeah, definitely. So is there anything else you'd like to add that we haven't already covered?
No, I feel like I really got a lot off my chest.
That's great.
It's a topic I'm passionate about, and I'm really excited that it's cropping up everywhere. Because like I'm very anti-conference, and so people think it's funny. I'm super vocal about how much I hate conferences, but at the same time, like I'm like, yeah, start up a meetup in your college, like meetups everywhere, because that's what we need. Like we got to stop with these conferences because they're getting counterproductive. Just like have your local meetups. Like I understand why the conferences are so popular, and it's because everybody likes hanging out and talking with other like-minded people.
Yep.
You don't have to get on an airplane for that. You can get in a car. You can possibly walk or take a public transit to get that if you just have a good CitySec meetup rolling.
Right. Well, that's interesting that you said that, because you're a pretty regular conference goer.
Well, it's because I'm speaking.
Yeah.
Like I almost never go to a conference if I'm not speaking at it. And if I am speaking, like I go because I'm going to help people. And
right.
That's just what I like doing. Very few of the conferences pay. Most of them don't even pay travel and expenses. Like if you see me speaking at a conference, that means I bought a plane ticket and I bought a couple nights at a hotel just to come there and talk to you for an hour. If that doesn't show you that I give a crap, I don't know what else you want.
No, that's good. I think I'm
not getting paid $1,000 to go do this.
Right. Yep, you're right. Well, but you are speaking on this exact topic at BSides Nashville.
I absolutely am. And it's because they asked if I could do it. And they said, hey, can you come and do like a panel on BurbSec? And I was like, why don't I do one better and do a panel on CitySecs? And I called a bunch of friends who had started successful CitySecs that I just personally knew of in their areas. And don't get mad at me for leaving you out. I was just like,
no. No, it's cool. And, I'm going to be there shooting pictures anyway. So right. I have a job there.
So I got some people coming from MySec up in Michigan, which is a really cool and very unique CitySec setup. Like they're in multiple cities in Michigan. So, I got Kate Vita coming down to talk about that. I've got Fletcher Munson coming in from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, who's just plugging away at it. Like his numbers aren't amazing, but he is super dedicated, and he's got some super dedicated people who always show up, like really great people, and it's working out, and I really like them up there. So he's going to come down, and I have one of the original founder/coordinators of BurbSec Prime coming with, and we're like going to all give our own like unique opinions on like why we think what we do works and what doesn't work. It's going to be really cool and really well-rounded.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that conference is April 16th. So if you could make it out, that's one of my favorite conferences to go to. So I highly recommend BSides Nashville. All right. Anything you would like to plug?
Oh man. No, I'm not. I think I self-promote enough. The very fact that I'm on here is enough. I'm flying out Thursday. I'm going to go shoot an episode of a GameSpot show called Reality Check, where we're tearing apart watchdogs. And I'm going to be training their hosts on some basic hacking and then sending them through like a hardware CTF. So that might be cool, because we're taking hacking neophytes and then, within a day sending them through a hardware CTF with like webcams and things like that, and some lock picking. And so I'm freaking out about that right now. I'm trying to get a lab together. I'll tweet out when that thing airs, and we'll see how awesome or terrible it is.
All right. Well, go ahead and give me your Twitter handle. Usually I have this ready, but I'm an awful person.
Yeah. Twitter is definitely the best place to find me. I never shut up on Twitter. at Johnny Xmas on Twitter, but it's spelled all leet. So it's J0HNNYXM4S, Johnny Xmas. And I am all over the Twitter. So go ahead and hit me up, follow me, yell at me, tell me I dress weird. I'm all about it.
All right. Well, that's going to do it. Thank you for joining me to discuss how to start a successful CitySec meetup.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Always cool to be here.
And that will do it. Hopefully you learned something. If you didn't, drop me a line on Twitter at Timothy D. Block. That's DEBLOCK, or email me at timothy.dblock@gmail.com. Let me know what you didn't learn and we'll cover it in a future podcast. Show notes can be found at timothydblock.com/EIS. If you enjoyed the show, share it with others and rate it on iTunes. If you'd like to donate to the show, check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/EIS. Have a good one.